Are you guys sitting there and thinking, why am I not just pushing through 1000 rating? Like, what is wrong with me? Fear no longer, young ones. I will teach you. This video will give you the tools to skyrocket from 500 to 1000 rating and beyond. I'm just gonna give you 5 easy questions that you can use. Let's get into it. Currently on the screen, there are 2 chessboards. One of them definitely looks better than the other, you could say. I want you guys to take a little bit of time. Let me know what you think about it. Which position as white would you rather be? When I look at the position on the right as white, I can see that there's a lot of pawn action moving. I can see that there's just not a lot of good development. What is developed is the rook, and it's on a very awkwardly placed square. You can just clearly see, like, white just moved here, black to move. There's a hanging knight. Like, this one doesn't seem very good. For the board on the left as white, you can see black just took the d5 square, and it's white turn, and if he takes back with bishop, then it's a very clear threat onto the rook, and it's really hard to stop. You can look at development as well. White is just very stably developed, so to speak, and if you just compare that to who they're playing, I mean, they're in a much better position. So when you compare the chessboards, I think we're gonna lean on liking the left side, and that's why the left side more closely represents a 1000 rated player compared to the right side of the board, which you would more likely see that with a 500 rated player. So let's keep on moving. So the next question I like to ask is, what are my opponent's threats and what are my threats? So when you understand that every move in chess creates a potential threat, then you can start recognizing it and taking advantage of it. So let's get into this next board. Here you can see white just moved their knight because they were being threatened, and now there's a double and actually a triple attack onto the black knight on c6. And sadly, what actually ended up happening, because this player did not ask these questions, is black took the e5 knight, and then white actually took the d7 bishop with their bishop, which led black to retake the bishop with the black knight, allowing black to essentially win a piece, and it's simply because white did not understand what was being threatened when multiple threats were present. And just as a side note, a lot of these questions, they can kind of blend and overlap with each other, but they all complement each other well and have their own specific time as well. So throughout your games, really try to ask these questions at least more often, and try to ask all of them eventually. Alright, question number 2. What are the weaknesses on the board? Let's look at this second question board. We see black just moved their pawn from b7 to b5, and we can see that the queen is a little bit insecure here, and I'm wondering how we can tell that the queen is insecure. So we can see that the white bishop is actually aiming right at the queen. The only thing that's blocking it is its own knight. So a logical thing to do is let's remove that obstacle, and in this case we get to remove the obstacle and take a pawn. So we at least win a pawn here by using the white knight and taking it on b5. Just to expand a little bit more upon weaknesses, similar to threats, there are opportunities for making a plan, which we'll talk about later, and as a focus for attack. When you start thinking in these terms, it allows you to have a more focused, thought out chess game in general. Let's move on to the next question. So this question, I'm sure you've all heard of. If I do this, then what does my opponent do? Or vice versa. But it's harder to think that way. That's more of a multi-step thing, which is maybe not meant for the 500 to 1000 range quite yet. An advantage of asking this question, though, is it helps you to avoid falling into certain traps and allows you to anticipate some of your opponent's potential moves. And if you guys start thinking just 1 and 2 moves would be amazing ahead of what you've been doing, which may be 0 at this time, your chess games are going to look totally different, and you're going to be past 1000 rating in no time. So let's take a look at this board. Looks like black just played the ambitious move of h5, and using some of our previous questions, we can ask the question, what is their newest weakness? So what was this pawn protecting? g6 pawn, so it would make sense that if we took on g5, where are they going to go? It seems natural that they would go to move the rook to h8. So if they do that, then we can plan as well to move this bishop and take this pawn on h5, and if their knight takes back, then we have our queen. So it's kind of like we win 2 pawns essentially here, just by moving this 1 pawn. And it comes with a check as well, potentially. So, and if we didn't want to even do that, we could take on g6. He moves his rook over to g8, and then we could just take his bishop on f8. And we just win a pawn, and kind of open up his structure even more than this player has already opened it up, and the lack of development. Alright, I hope this goes to show how easy it is, really, to just fly through the 500 to 1000 rating in chess. Alright, let's move on to the next question. Question number 4. Which pieces should I develop? I don't know. So this is a beautiful question, and it should be mainly asked in the opening and the mid game as well. You can look to specifically which piece you want to develop, and also how can I develop them? Which square is the best for which piece, and so on. You would like to move the piece in a way that exploits the opponent's weaknesses, or adds on to your ongoing threats, trying to supplement your previous question and really strengthen your chess game. So let's look at the board here. Number 4. Black just moved b6. Now, let's see, what piece can I develop in order to make another attack? So I see Black's knight on e4 is kind of all alone, very scary, sad boy, or girl. And I'm thinking I would like to move my rook on f1 over, or I could further develop my bishop or even queen. I have lots of options here as white to continue developing and better my placement. Alright, let's move on to the last question. Number 5. What is my plan? Plans do not have to be complex. Sometimes I even forget to make a plan. Well, that's my own downfall. Anyways, when you're trying to think of a plan, it doesn't have to be extravagant. Keep your plan simple. Maybe your plan is to finish development. Or maybe development has completed and you're trying to look for a weakness. Whenever you're stuck in the game, you can always come back to these questions and you rotate through them, and eventually you'll find a question that can be applied and it can have impact. So when we look at this last board, plan for white, I've drawn out with arrows. They initially had their rook on d1, and they saw, okay, the king and the rook are on the same line, so let's just disregard the fact that the knight is here. White is having a plan that he wants to attack the king with check and take the enemy rook. Another plan could be to just stack your rooks. Simple as that. Make them stronger and together. So these 5 questions that I've shown should be able to help you really focus on what you need to do during a game. And it's going to be tough. Sometimes you're going to totally forget to do all the questions, but if you have like a little sticky note or a little timer, you can make sure every certain amount of time you ask a question to yourself. Practice during a bot game just to get the flow, or something low stakes, you know. Thinking about them will help you in your chess games. Thank you. So, what I want to do now is take it to the board, you know? We're talking about practice here. I don't know what we're doing here. Shoot. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to get into a game, I'm going to apply these 5 questions, and hopefully you guys can kind of see the style in which I apply these questions, and hopefully it will be successful. Okay, so I was fortunate enough to be able to get a player in this range and play with them. So let's see what they do. Okay, so they've given me 2 pawns, and I haven't really even had a chance to ask about my threats, but I could just clearly see. Okay, so she took back, ran L, took back with her knight. So we're asking about threats and weaknesses, and that a lot of that applies to the middle game and not immediately, generally, in the opening. So in the opening you want to ask the question, what pieces can I develop? So let's develop the knight. And you can kind of look at what they're threatening. So they are threatening to pin my knight, oh, and they do, to my queen, and let's stop that. So let's apply the question of if this, then what? They could take and I can retake, and that'd be great for me. If I go here, they will probably just develop, but then I'll get the castle, so let's do that. And if I'm trying to think of a plan here, which it's actually not too early to think of it, besides continuing to develop, but after I castle, we can kind of see like this queenside area is a little bit weak. So maybe our plan can be to attack it and get some things going. And now here, ooh, I think I see something here. So this person brought their queen out, which is threatening here. But if we could get them to take, then we could be threatening their queen. So that's maybe my goal right now. They take, and they allow me to threaten their queen with my bishop. So what is this person gonna do? Probably move back, and if they kind of stay out here, that's gonna lead to me being able to develop threats on them a lot more, I think. We'll see how it goes though. Okay. That's actually a pretty good move. And I was not expecting this move, but what I'm gonna do is I am gonna go back and block. And if they move back here to threaten this, then I'm just gonna simply castle, move my rook over, and try to threaten down this line. So black has castled queenside, which is the weaker side that we were talking about. So let's just castle. Let's try to exploit this queen being out. So if we think about our threats, I'm threatening to pressure the queen by getting this rook over. If we think about my weaknesses, well, just looking at the board, you can see I have so many pieces that are just back here, undeveloped, not very useful. So let's try to make our pieces a little bit. So if we look at development, it seems pretty pitiful, so what I'm going to actually do is develop. And I assume she will try to develop too. Okay, so I think she could have gotten a little stronger square, but she wanted to be conservative and threaten checkmate actually. So I think the obvious thing is to just do that. So yeah, I'm going to try to take away that option by also threatening her queen. And if the queen takes, then my rook is in a good position to defend. And you can see the rating discrepancy, 1500 versus 850. It's obviously not a fair game, but I'm trying to point out the flaws in both of our games. Honestly, I feel I'm not playing well at all. And that's kind of what I'm purposely doing, just to keep it a little bit more even, and also I'm just trying to think about what I'm going to say next, if I'm going to be completely honest. So let's try to continue our development by releasing our bishop and defending the pawn as well. So now's around the time of the game where you may be stuck. I'm almost kind of fully developed. I need to think of a plan. What is a good way I can connect my pieces? Or you can ask yourself another kind of a question that I did not involve earlier in the video is, which piece is my worst piece? Which piece is my best piece? And how can I hold on to my best piece? And how can I better my worst piece? So in this case, I have not that many great pieces in general, but this bishop here is kind of cramping my space of things, so I might want to develop that. But a red flag has just gone off in my brain after e5 has been moved. So e5, moving e5, so when the pawn was on e6, it was defending these squares. So now I have the great option to move my knight to one of these squares. Or move it here. And I'm just going to say right off the bat, I like this move better because it's a direct threat to the queen. Taking, the person can simply take back with the threat of checkmate, so I would like to eliminate this checkmate threat. So let's do that by threatening the queen. And usually when you move your knight off of so the second move for the knight, you only want to do it if you are not going to be immediately harassed. And he could not immediately harass me, but now he can, but I can take with check at least. So that is a positive thing. So now we can use the question of if I take, then they will obviously take back. So I am leaning towards that, but if they do that, so we do another step, another round of that question. What will I do? And it looks like I can just take, but then they will take with their knight as well. So it's kind of a tough thing. So I will just take for time's sake. Oh, and she pre-moved it. Wow. This might be a smurf, if you know what I mean. So this is a nice little threat, but they can just harass me immediately, so maybe I don't want to do that. I think what I'm going to do is attempt to trade the queens, because if we look at, and we want to develop our pieces, right? So we can check off that box. Our queen hasn't been moved at all. And it's being blocked. It's not like a very good queen. And this queen, yeah, it's out in the open, but there's some pieces that have come off, so the queen is kind of getting strong here. So what I would like to propose is a trade of queens. Because if you have someone's piece and your equal value, quote unquote, at the start of the game at least, piece, during the game those piece values can change, and relatively to the game obviously, and in this case her queen is much better than mine, kind of for the reasons I said. So sadly my opponent did not see that I can take her queen, so I will take the queen, and I don't know if they will resign or what, but this game just got a lot easier for me. And yes, I have used about 2 more minutes of my time, but that's because I've been thinking, which my brain is very slow in general, and also because I've been asking a lot of the questions and explaining it for you guys. So just because we won a piece does not mean the game is over. Let's continue it. So what are my opponent's threats? Nothing really new now. I mean, I don't see anything that they can immediately take, like the rook is threatening this, but this is well defended. I would not consider that a real threat. So we can ask ourselves the question, what is our threats? We're kind of threatening to take this pawn. We can just take, I believe. But do I want to take with the queen, or do I want to develop a piece as well? So it looks like we can develop this piece with threat on the rook. And by developing this bishop, we connect our rooks. Probably one of the stronger moves I can make. And if you really wanted to go if you wanted to go further in the evaluation before you moved, you could ask, if I do this, then what are they going to do? And you can even repeat that question a couple times. The if-then question is probably one that you will be asking or looping the most throughout your games. So that's actually a nice move by the opponent, potentially. I see her, the idea in that she wants to defend this rook. But in a game where you're down pieces, you're down, in a game where you're down pieces, it's not the best to trade, especially in exchange. So we're gonna go ahead and take. So if I do this, then she does that, then what can I do? I can be thinking while it's my opponent's turn. I can continue to develop that not so well placed bishop and develop with check. And then the game kind of will wrap up pretty soon, just because the nature of how being up such a large amount goes. So I'm going to pin the knight to the queen and then push. I just made a very quick plan there. And the more and more you get used to asking these questions, you're going to get to a point where you don't really even have to ask them in your head. You're just going to be like looking for certain things, kind of like pattern recognition, and it's going to help out a lot. A little side note, whenever you're up this many pieces, and yes, my opponent does have many potential moves, legal moves, besides the king, so you just want to keep in mind, do not stalemate. Sometimes you can get an ego, and you'll be like, oh, I'm just going to mess around and get all my pawns to queens, or whatever, and you will not have great success there. And my opponent has resigned, understandably so. So, I hope you all enjoyed that video. It's kind of a brief introduction to some of these questions and details of the questions. And yeah, I hope you guys got something from it. If you apply these consistently and you kind of expand upon them, especially in your analysis, you can really learn to look for and see things in the game that you've never seen before, and your game will transform massively. Guarantee it. You look at any other related video in this skill range, this is what you're going to want to focus on. And just lastly, if you guys really did enjoy the video, give it a like or dislike it if you didn't, either way, but comment down below. Tell me what I did good, tell me what I did bad, tell me about your experience with these questions or chess in general. I'm curious. I want to hear about it. I want to help you guys learn. I want to learn because obviously you can see how I played. There's some flaws. But anyways, hope you guys enjoyed and have a great day. See ya.